Good day, ma'am. Good day, everyone. Our topic for today is Rizal and the Revolution of 1896 by Floro, Quibuyen. A deep chasm separates our contemporary historians from the nationalist life world of 19th century. Nothing could have sounded more absurd to the ears of both peasants and illustrados of the revolutionary past than the now taken for granted thesis, the Rizal, like the rest of the reformists in Spain, was for assimilation and that, true to his bourgeois character, he repudiated the revolution. This was certainly not now how Rizal was seen by contemporaries. For example, Gallicano, Apacible, Rizal's cousin and fellow expatriate. Jose Alejandrino, Rizal's roommate in Germany, who would later figure prominently in the revolution as a general, concurs with Apacible and finds it strange that some of his biographers have presented Rizal as completely opposed to the revolution of 1896. The Katipuneros have even gone farther than the Ilustrado colleagues of Rizal. They have venerated Rizal as the symbol and inspiration of the revolution. Rizal's name was the password used among the higher-ranking members. The picture of Rizal was hung in every Katipunan meeting hall, and according to Emilia Cinto, Katipunan meetings were always adjourned with 3 cheers: "Long live the Katipunan, long live Philippine independence, and long live Dr. Jose Rizal." This veneration of Rizal continued beyond 1896. In 1898, in commemoration of the second death anniversary of Rizal, the Aguinaldo-led Philippine Republic issued a pamphlet which invoked the martyr's name. Such was the veneration of Rizal by the revolutionary leadership from the first phase of the revolution, 1896 to 1897, to the second phase, 1898 to 1901. That Ricarte, the one illustrated revolutionary who refused to concede the defeat of the revolution to the American forces, was inspired to propose changing the name of the country. In the revolutionary constitutions, he drafted it as a Rizalino Republic and its citizens to be called, instead of Filipinos, Rizalinos. Indeed, long after the military forces of the Philippine Republic under Aguinaldo surrendered in 1901, peasants continued the fight against the Americans in the name of Rizal. These facts are most crucial in interpreting Rizal, for if Renato Constantino's interpretation of Rizal as a counter-revolutionary is correct, then verily the Katipuneros were guilty of venerating Rizal without understanding. That is to say, they did not have the same informed and intelligent understanding that Constantinus has always had. But during Rizal's time, Constantinus' opinion would have been considered extraordinary, if not absurd. The now conventional view of Rizal as a phenomenally gifted reformer whose political goal was the assimilation of the Philippines to Spain and the Hispanization of the Indio was actually propagated by the American colonialists in the aftermath of the genocidal Philippine-American War. It seems that the American colonizers first learned about Rizal from 2 sources, both counter-revolutionaries, the pro-American Dr. Trinidad H. Pardo de Tavera and the infamous Wencelso y Ritana Tavera, a Spanish mestizo medical doctor, Sanskrit scholar, and ethnohistorian, was one of the first illustrados who offered their services to the Americans as soon as the Spanish regime collapsed. Ritana was the anti-Rizal professor, journalist who had change of heart after Spain's defeat and wrote in 1907 the first documented full biography of Rizal. To this date, there has no been English translation of this historically important biography. Tavera and Ritana shared a common view of Rizal as the multi-talented liberal and reformist intellectual who opposed Bonifacio's uprising, but who was nonetheless the most revered of all Filipino patriots. Notwithstanding the obvious contradiction in this thesis, the American authorities found it most congenial to their colonial agenda. Perhaps the first professional historian to take note of the irony involved in American colonial appropriation of Rizal is Scamacher. So complete was the American appropriation, notes Scamacher, that post-colonial nationalist historiography has tended to see Rizal's work as an American view. Tavera provided the Americans' first image of Rizal. Tavera's version of Rizal can be gleaned from a 15-page transcript of the interview with the Sherman Commission created by President McKinley as a fact-finding and policy-recommending mission in the Philippines during the American conquest in 1899 and included the report of the Philippine Commission for the President. This version of Tavera has been reproduced down the line, from 1899 to the contemporary period, in the work not only Filipino writers and historians like Manuel Jose and Constantino, but also of virtually all American scholars. But it was Ritana who fully explicated the now taken for granted reputation that Rizal was the anti-revolutionary reformist and that in the final analysis he was a deeply loyal subject of Spain. It was also Ritana who provided the documentary evidence primary sources for Rizal's assumalist reformism. Ritana's biography also started the now standard reading of Rizal's novels. That character of Ibarra represents Rizal and that of Elias Bonifacio. Ritana's interpretation of Rizal's politics was seconded by the first American translator of Rizal's novels, Charles de Berkshire, who reiterated Ritana's assumalist thesis in his translator Introduction to the Social Cancer. This thesis was picked up and popularized by the second biographer of Rizal, Asun Craig. Rizal, a peace-loving reformist who would have applauded were he alive America's benevolent, modernizing, and democratic assimilation of the Philippines. This view has since become the orthodoxy on Rizal, but on what documentary sources is it based? Ritana's erroneous identification of Rizal with Ibarra can be easily disposed of, for Rizal himself had unequivocally belied this interpretation twice. First, in his La Solidaridad polemic with Barrantes, Rizal declared that he was not Ibarra, for I am neither rich nor a mestizo, nor an orphan, nor do the qualities of Ibarra coincide with mine. Second, in his conversation with Jose Alendrino, Rizal revealed that his hero was not Ibarra but Elias.
Zaid versus Manuel, the Rizal debate. Of the early Rizal scholars and historians, one who came up with a view contrary to the official American version was Dr. Gregorio Zaid, who asserted that Rizal supported the revolution in his essay. Was Rizal against the revolution? He said that he has always opposed, fought, and made clear that armed revolution was impossible, absurd, and disastrous. He explained that reforms must also come from above because reforms that come from below are upheavals both violent and transitory. Rizal was in favor of the revolution and that Rizal believed that independence is won, not asked for. Rizal's credo was a true revolution, a fight to the last for the freedom of the Philippines. In 1896, Dr. Pio Valenzuela's memoir of his time as a prisoner of war during the Spanish-Philippine War was published by Jose Rizal's biographer, Eduardo Zaid. 3 years later, A. Arsenio Manuel, 1934, then a budding historian and anthropologist, came out with his critique of Zaid's evidence, refuting the Tatars' account. Rizal's 15 December 1896 Manifesto, written in prison while awaiting a military trial for treason, is considered by many to be the definitive evidence of his anti-colonial and anti-eliminationist politics. In it, he calls for the education of the people so that through hard work they may acquire a personality of their own and so become worthy of liberties. Rizal's manifesto is consistent with his 12 December memorandum, which makes a reference to Valenzuela's visit to the Pitan, and the opening parts reads, "I had no knowledge of what was being projected until the 1st of 2nd of July of 18% when Pio Valenzuela came to tell me of an uprising." In Manuel Valenzuela gave two declarations while in prison, portions of which are quoted below. Dr. Luis Tabial de Andrade reiterates Rizal's testimony of his final defense, read on 25 December 1896 before the Council of War. Bonifacio flew into a rage on hearing the news, called Rizal a coward, and ordered the witness not to say a word about it. Bonifacio's account of events in the Katipunan chamber contradicts that of Pio Valenzuela, who he says went to the Pitan to consult with Rizal on the outbreak of an armed revolt. Manuel also mentions the corroborating testimony of Luis Dizon, though he does not cite it, referring instead to Dizon's 1896 prison testimony. Manuel needs to be reminded that Valenzuela did make a current declaration affirming his memoir over his prison declarations when interviewed by Zaid in 1931. One view of Rizal, propounded by Agoncillo and the other by Constantino, is that he was a reformist and an assimilationist whose goal was the assimilation of the Filipino. Only the conclusion of Constantino is different. It is only logical conclusion given the premises. But Rizal had transcended his Ilustrados background and became committed to the people's struggle, while Constantino had not. We can resolve this debate by addressing two fundamental issues. One, the question of historiography. How valid are the historical sources upon which Manuel, Agoncillo, and Constantino based their interpretation regarding Rizal's political stance towards revolution? And two, the meaning of Rizal's martyrdom. What was the impact of Rizal's voluntary sacrifice on the revolution struggle? To answer this twofold question, we shall apply our critical hermeneutic on some hitherto unexplored texts, both written and enacted. Following Constantinos argued, it would appear the Rizal betrayed the revolution twice. First, by demonstrating his loyalty to Spain when he volunteered to serve in the medical corps of the Spanish during the Cuban Revolution, and second, by condemning the revolution when it finally erupted in the Philippines, exhorting his countrymen to lay down their arms and abandon an uprising that he condemned as criminal, savage, and absurd. Valenzuela's memoir provides a direct answer to the first question. Rizal's volunteering for Cuba. He said that his intention in applying for the post of military doctor was to study the war in practical way, go through in Cuban soldiery if he thought he would find their solutions which would remedy the bad situation in the Philippines.
Pio Valenzuela's testimony. While Manuel et al. Are familiar with Valenzuela's two present testimonies, 6 September 1896 and 6 October 1896, and his 1914 memoir, which they claim are mutually contradictory, they don't seem to be aware of the third and last sworn testimony given by Valenzuela before a civilian court in 1917, which supports his 1914 memoir. As a prisoner of the Spanish regime during the outbreak of the Philippine Revolution, Valenzuela gave a series of 5 testimonies from 2 to 13 September 1896 and 2 more corroborating testimonies on 6 and 7 October 1896. It is from one of these prison testimonies that Manuel, Agoncillo, and Constantino derive their evidence. The text extracted from Valenzuela's response to the question if he went to the Pitan on June 1896 to confer with Jose Rizal and what was the purpose of their conference. Herein lies the beginning of the academic debate pitting Rizal against Bonifacio, an utterly misleading and counterproductive exercise because it is based solely on one testimony and ignores the 2 post-prison testimonies of Valenzuela, which are consistently unequivocal in affirming Rizal's supports for the revolution. His 27 May 1914 memoir, typewritten in Spanish upon the request of Dr. Bantog, who, as mentioned earlier, became the husband of Rizal's great-grandniece, Asuncion, and his 12 September 1917 sworn declarations as a witness for the defense of Vicente Soto in the case of U.S. versus Vicente Soto for libel. Valenzuela's sworn statements clarifies 2 issues and confirm the basic points of his 1914 memoir. Number 1. Rizal's threefold counsel to the Katipunan regarding the revolution. Firstly, that the necessary arms and ammunitions as well as the cooperation of the wealthy Filipinos must be assured before waging an uprising. Secondly, if the Katipunan is discovered, it would be better to fight than to flee. Thirdly, if the rich Filipinos refuse to support the Katipunan, then they should be neutralized. Number 2. The Katipunan's response to his counsel, i.e. the majority, including Bonifacio, agreed with Rizal. There are actually 3 subtexts in Valenzuela's sworn testimony. Number 1. The question of Santiago's being a traitor. Number 2. The relevance of Rizal's support for the revolution and his solidarity with Bonifacio's Katipunan to the libel case filed by Santiago against Soto. And 3. The fiscal's interest in pursuing what technically appears to be a separate case, i.e. Rizal's perspective on the revolution and whether this was shared by the Katipunan members. Evidently, in the early years of American rule in the Philippines, the question of Rizal with respect to the revolution was an issue of crucial importance. The 15 December Manifesto. The evidence that Constantino cites to prove that Rizal repudiated the revolution is Rizal's 15 December Manifesto, addressed to the Filipino people and presented for Rizal's defense during his court trial for treason. This document is now regarded, largely on account of Constantino's popular essay, as the definitive proof that Rizal was against the revolution. Though dated 15 December, this manifesto was in fact written at an earlier date, 10 December 1896. Rizal issued a later clarification of his defense dated 12 December 1896. Here, Rizal laid down his political views before the Judge Advocate General, who was not quite impressed. It is easy to say why if, as Guerrero 1863-427 said, we do not close our ears to the hidden meaning that the Judge Advocate General was alert enough to catch. The Spanish authorities did not read Rizal's manifesto in the same way that Constantino has read it. They were in fact disappointed that Rizal did not profess loyalty to Spain, nor did Rizal reject independence as in principle undesirable. Rizal even had the temerity to assert its inevitability. Thus, Rizal's manifesto was never issued to the public. The authorities may have feared that if issued publicly, the manifesto, far from dampening revolutionary fervor, would more likely to be read by the Filipinos in a different, more subversive light, especially in view of the context in which it was written. It is in this vein that E. San Juan Jr. attacks a shallow, one-dimensional reading of Rizal's text, a misreading that leads Constantino not only to declare Rizal's counter-revolutionary assimilationism, but also to ignore all other evidences to the contrary, i.e. Rizal's letters, his political projects, and especially the testimonies of his contemporaries. Leon Maguerero has a more casual reading of Rizal's prison declarations. According to Guerrero 1963-426, we must consider both 12 December Memorandum and 15 December Manifesto partly in the light of the purpose for which they were written. Rizal had prepared a brief for the defense, and like a good lawyer, he was attacking the prosecution at its weakest point. The insufficiency of its evidence with any direct connection between him and the revolution. Guerrero, however, unwittingly reproduces Constantino's dichotomies. Example given, Rizal versus Bonifacio, Reform versus Revolution, when he interprets the 15 December Manifesto in the light of what he perceives to be the methodological or tactical difference between Rizal and Bonifacio. Like Constantino, Guerrero seems to construe Rizal's 15 December Manifesto as his last will and testament.
We have shown that for both the Ilustrados and the peasants, Rizal was the central figure of the nationalist movement. This veneration of Rizal was never contested until some time later after the Americans established their rule over the islands. Since then, to the peasants' day, the symbol of Rizal has become a much contested area, and the geological terrain of hegemony. Thus, something has happened that calls for a critical reading. This is a serious and urgent problem because writing of a misread and misrepresented Rizal will have the opposite effect of what the anti-Rizalist nationalists intend to accomplish. Such unfounded denigration of Rizal will prevent the present generation, which is in dire need of a robust nationalist imagination, from gaining a proper understanding of the 19th century nationalist movement. The answer to this enigma can be found from the anti-Rizalist nationalists themselves. According to Jose, after brutally destroying the First Philippine Republic, American imperialists proceed to colonize the country by availing themselves of the collaboration of the Ilustrados. From those ranks, the most effective agent of American policy were subsequently chosen as part of their hegemonic task. The new royals enthroned in the public mind personalities not averse to American rule even as they denigrated those who opposed it. In view of his highly significant literary, artistic, and scientific achievements, and because he was consistent assimilationist, who never questioned colonialism as such, and considering that his dramatic death made him so easily lovable, Rizal observes Jose was the perfect hero for reinforcing the goals of the new colonial order. Thus, through a clever handling of mass propaganda, the Americans promoted the Rizal cult to further their own imperialist ends. The task of the true nationalist, therefore, is to expose and oppose this mass deception, denigrating Rizal by exposing his reactionary politics is thus integral to the nationalist effort of opposing American imperialism. The publication of Constantino's essays signaled the decentering of Rizal as a nationalist symbol, with the vulgarization of the symbol that resulted from its colonial appropriation by the American regime. That decentering was probably bound to happen with or without Constantino's assault. Constantino's critique of Rizal, however, served to push further to the fringes the already marginalized millennial consciousness. Unable to understand such peasant consciousness, Marxist postulatives laboring from the scourge of modernity. That is, peasant consciousness is simply a backward consciousness compared to their more advanced proletarian and scientific consciousness. Hence, the articulation of ideological viewpoints among various segments or classes towards a common counter-hegemonic perspective, the motive force of anti-imperialist nationalism in the Third World, and which the 19th century nationalist movement achieved, could not materialize. The result is a fragmented nationalist movement unable to present a united front against the forces of reaction, which are now more entrenched than ever. The Philippine state, after a short-lived euphoria on the democratic space provided by the unceremonious departure of Marcos, is now back in the hands of the traditional oligarchy. As the cartoonist Corky Trinidad 1924 observed, the Filipinos woke up the next day to find the same politicians holding all the highest offices in the land. Filipinos blow their wad to find the only trace of the revolution was a commemorative statue. Constantino's move in decentering Rizal left a vacuum and the mythological terrain of nationalism. The problem was not Rizal after all. All along, the problem has been with our historians who, in unwittingly reproducing American colonial discourse on Rizal and the Philippine nationalist movement of the 19th century, failed to read the popular imagination and the spirit of the times.